when the artist is really, really nice and, really kind of easygoing, you almost forget who you're talking to at times. Like, I just thought of another one when you asked me about the nervous thing. And I'd probably say Winston from Parkway Drive. I was pretty fucking nervous for that. But he was literally like one of the nicest people I've ever met. Like my then fiance, now wife, was helping me behind the camera and stuff because it was a download.
Yeah.
And I think I was just like, oh yeah, this is my fiance. And he's like, oh my God, congratulations. Like, when are you guys getting married? Like, all this sort of stuff. And I was like, wow, you don't have to care. You don't have to ask these kind of questions, but it's when artists are just really, really nice that it really does make a difference. You know what I mean?
Hi, welcome back to the Headbangers podcast, where your hosts Nathan and Brad. Here today, we're joined by the Metal Tris.
So let's talk about Stan. I'm guessing it's like a joke on Hail Satan. Is that right?
Wait, the album isn't called Hail Satan? Wait, did somebody fuck up?
Is there like a typo or something?
Wait a second. No.
Wait, I gotta check this.
First of all, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, mate. How are you guys?
We are doing good.
Yeah, good, man.
So I want to start off with just asking about your channel, obviously. So take us on the journey from the beginning to now. Did you ever expect to see the reception that you've got now? And what was the vision like when you first started it?
Truth be told, there was no vision. It was just kind of, I feel like, all of these things, where you think that there's a big sort of orchestration behind it. A lot of it is just kind of like blind luck and things like that. But basically, before I started up the channel, I used to run a website called The Metalist, which is basically how I got the Metal Tris, because I was like, oh, well, if we're going to take the audience that used to read The Metalist, I'd just kind of like change it like that. And it was actually my wife who was just like, why don't you try YouTube? Just like, it was really awkward at first because I was just there, like sat on my own in front of a camera and just kind of being like, well, this is really, really weird. But then when you treat it like, it's one of your mates or something, it just kind of comes naturally, really. But truth be told, I really didn't expect, the kind of audience that I've had. And I'm still to this day always so grateful for anyone who does watch any videos or, like who kind of discovers a new band, just because I've been like talking about them and stuff. But I think one of the big catalysts for this sort of thing was when I was doing the stuff with Metal Sucks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, we've heard of them.
So I think it's about for a year, I did this series called Apocalyptic Anniversaries, which was like, I look back on, like albums that turn 10, 20, 30, those sort of things. And we do it like every week. And that was really, really fun. But obviously Metal Sucks has quite a large following. So that really, really kind of helped, kind of broaden the channel a little bit more. But, there wasn't kind of like a big sort of archetypal plan that I had. I was just kind of, I guess that's kind of how YouTube works, really, to be fair. Like, you just kind of suck it and see, and then you kind of try and adapt. I mean, I say I try and adapt. I've literally been doing album reviews and interviews for like 4 years running. But yeah, that's basically how it kind of started, I guess.
I guess you're right. There's not really a certain structure when you first start, and you sort of trial and error. So you do things, you see if it works. You see what you enjoy, you see what you don't. But I mean, it sounds like you came from like a background of already sort of reviewing things before. So when you, even though going on camera for the first time, can confirm is very awkward, but like once you get over that, you've got the base for it there already from what you did before.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it definitely helped because. So we launched the Metalist, I think it was in 2014 that we launched it, something like that. It was on the 4th of July. I remember that much. And it was great, man. It opened a lot of doors. I think we did it for about 2 years or 3 years, something like that. Yeah, because I started in 2016, the YouTube channel. So it was about 2 years. And, we got to interview some really cool bands, like Anthrax was probably a high point for me. It was run by myself and my business partner as well, who's a like really, really good mate of mine. It basically started because we were in the pub and he was like, let's make a metal website. And I was like, that sounds like a brilliant idea.
That's very similar how it started for us as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just like a random message on. Brad sent like a message onto the group chat, like, who'd be interested in doing like a metal podcast, and I was the only one that replied to it. And like it like about a month of like planning, and then being like, fuck it, we can't really plan it that well. We'll just do the first episode. We'll just talk shit for like a couple hours. Whatever isn't good, we'll just edit out. But looking back on it, I've been like begging Brad to delete some of those old videos because I'm like, they're unwatchable.
God,
they're unwatchable.
Oh,
no,
mate.
like they are really. I like watching them. We're like, oh no. Like they were just so unstructured, and like how we do things now is so different to the point where we're like, when we look back on our old episodes, we're kind of like, oh yeah, but that could have been so much.
It's horrible, isn't it? You look back and you're like, oh, did I really say that?
Yeah, especially like because I used to have like this idea, like podcasting, you had to be like the biggest personality and just rant about shit all the time. Because I a lot of the podcasts that I watched were comedians, and that's what they tend to do. So I think in the early stages, I was mimicking them, and then as we've done it, we've developed our own styles of doing it, and it's been like, why the fuck did I just decide to do that?
Let's just be yourself as the outcome of that. Just when you try and adapt to be something else on YouTube, or just not being true to yourself, I think people will notice, and I think that's why Nathan doesn't like looking back on it, because he was trying to mimic those comedians, and I think even I was sort of like a bit robotic. I was trying to interview people, just like, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? I'm just like, that's not how it should work. Like, you got to have a conversation, So yeah, it's funny looking back, but I like having them there because I can look back and say, this is how far we've come. We're not there anymore.
Exactly, man. That's a huge step, and I totally agree on the sort of interviewing side of things. Like, one of the biggest things I've always said is like, I want this to just be a conversation. And like, obviously I do a bit of prep work. Actually, I do quite a lot of prep work, but I try and kind of keep it as sort of open-ended as possible, because I feel like, a lot of people don't let artists kind of properly talk. And a lot of people try and kind of jump in before the artist might actually say something really quite interesting. And also, if you're trying to kind of tick off everything that you've got on your sort of like list, you kind of sometimes like block yourself from another answer that's kind of coming out. That, at least that's what I've found in, like when I've been chatting to different bands and stuff like that.
Definitely. Like I've always seen with interviewing, like where the most like comfortable you are, like in terms of just how you even pose the questions. Like I've noticed even not even posing the questions if it's a question, and having a genuine conversation has a lot better of a quality of an interview than like, cause I feel like we're in like this time now where a lot of people have got the freedom to be able to pick the platform that they choose their content. But it's not like back in the day where it's like, you watch this TV program, this is the only TV program that interviews the bands or musicians that you like. You've got to watch that, and and it was very structured and formal. Now we've got podcasts, we've got YouTube videos, and it's a much more authentic way of getting that person's personality across in such a long format, like non-edited, like I don't know what the word is, but a non-edited sort of medium where now you're going, you feel like after it, you actually know the person. Like if you then watch an actual TV interview, they're like, oh, well, it's almost like a fake persona that everyone puts on. It's so humanization to do that. Yeah, definitely. As well, like looking back, speaking on interviews, like looking back at all the interviews you've done, what is easily the one that stands out to you the most?
Ooh. I think, to be totally honest, the Contortionist interview was really, really good fun. And that has ended up being like one of the most engaged with, let's just say, interviews. I think it's got something like 100 odd comments on it now, because it was just so like I've been a fan of the Contortionists for years. I think they're one of the most amazing modern prog metal bands there are. And to kind of, like, I guess in a way, what we were talking about, just having a conversation with someone, like it was just very relaxed, but also, like there was so much that I found out that I had absolutely no idea was, in clairvoyant or language or anything like that. I would also say Michael Ackerfeld was a massive one.
Jealous.
That was a big sort of like tick on the old bucket list. I remember just before the interview, I didn't know who it was I was going to speak to, and I was up in Norwich for the show. I've got a mate who lives up in Norwich, so I just said, "Hey, do you want to come and see Opeth and me and stuff?" And I was hoping that it would be Michael Ackerfeld, but I wasn't that sure. Mm-hmm. So the tour manager came in, and he was like, "Okay, like we're going to bring the artist out in a minute." So all right, cool. So just who is it that I'm going to be talking to? And he was like, "Oh, it'll be Michael." I was like, "Okay, cool, no worries." Door closes, and I'm like, "Yes." They're like the inner fanboy in me came out. I'd probably say them, and then I'm trying to think of the bands that I've interviewed and some of the sort of highlights. Like Periphery was really good fun as well. But a lot of the time it's the ones that you don't necessarily think, or like you're having a bad day or something like that, and you're just kind of not quite in the headspace. But then when you get there, everything's really cool. Like, I guess Trevor from the Black Dahlia Murder is another one. He's always a really, really great person to chat with. I've interviewed him a couple of times now. And then, yeah, there's a lot. But I would probably say my highlight has to be Michael Ackerfeld for sure. Yeah. Like, I'm a massive Opeth fan.
What was it like doing that interview? I mean, I've watched it and it was incredible, but like, what was it like to just be opposite him? Because he is a big name, isn't he?
He is. And, he is a big name, but also I think, he's got an amazing sense of humor, so like if you kind of like, if you're dry with him, it kind of works. And he was just very, very insightful, and being a fan, and like such a big fan, I was kind of like, oh, wow. I was trying to think of all the things I've always wanted to find out. And that's another thing, when I think of like what questions I might sort of ask a band or an artist, it's kind of like, what would you want to find out as a fan? Like, if you were a big, big fan of this band, what's the main thing that you'd be after? But he was just really nice, like really chill. And we had a photo like afterwards, because I fanboyed. And yeah, he was just like super chill. We had like a chat afterwards as well. That's another one, I think, sometimes where you'll do the interview and then sometimes you end up just having a chat for ages. Like, I don't know if you guys know the band Rivers of Night Hill.
Yeah, I've seen them. Incredible.
I've seen them pop up a couple of times. Yeah,
amazing band, right? So we back in the Metalist days, I interviewed Brody, and we did the interview in like 20 minutes or something, and then we spent 2 hours on Skype talking about Steven Wilson and how amazing Steven Wilson is, and now we're really good friends. So it's like, it's one of those things, sometimes the best interviews can kind of come at a bit of a surprise, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something I've noticed as well with interviewing. It's one thing to sort of have a good interview, but I also think it's like another to like genuinely connect with the person. Like, there's been so many interviews where it sort of like snuck up on us where we've gone into it. Like, I like, for example, if I'd had like a bad day at work and I'd be, sometimes you go, oh, okay, I've got the interview, but then you're like, oh, I kind of wish I could just chill out tonight. And then you go on the interview and you're like, oh shit. And then you start having a lot more fun. And then you're like, okay, I was just being an idiot earlier. And it's so, I find as well, like, I think one thing that struck us when we got Richard from Cradle of Filth, when we got to sit down and speak to him, it was so shocking how like nice and down to earth he was, like, considering he's in just such a ginormous band like Cradle of Filth. He was just so like, oh, my favorite moment was playing Download, and he's like, oh my god. It's like, because then you realize, oh, these guys are just as much as a fan of metal and as a fan of music as you are. So like they're also proper fanboys with this music. So they just genuinely just love talking shit about this. It was just so surreal. Like
I've got a similar story. Like I interviewed Rich. I think when they played the Coco on, was it the Kryptoriana tour or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And we just did the same thing. We just geeked out about music and about Steven Wilson again. It's him that brings everyone together. And he's just, like really down to earth guy, super chill, and one of the best guitarists I think out there. I personally think, this lineup that Cradle are in at the minute is the best lineup they've had in absolutely years. 100%.
Yeah, couldn't agree
100%.
more. The last two albums for me are probably my favorite, and that's obviously a big statement to make considering like all the ones before that I consider the classics, but they're still making classics now in my opinion. So no, it's very interesting. So you've talked about like your favorite interviews. Was any that you were quite nervous for? Have you just become like prone to just saying, "Oh fuck it, I don't get stage fright anymore," or was any like, "Okay, I am shitting bricks right now"?
I guess Anthrax was pretty nerve wracking when it was, when we were doing the Metalist and stuff like that. That was, I remember my first one was the bassist from Camelot, and I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. I just thought I'll try this out and see what sort of sticks. I'm trying to think of like I was pretty nervous for Opeth, I guess, but at the end of the day, like when I kind of think about it too much, I'm just like, they're just people at the end, like they're just like us three, like they're very, very talented people, but they are just humans like us. Alex Stolnick actually was quite nerve wracking. That was really, really cool. That was one of the last interviews I did before the pandemic happened. And I think Steven Wilson, actually, that was probably one of the most nerve-wracking ones. I did that on my lunch break. I had literally like a 20-minute slot, and I had like, to run into my rec room when I was working at the time. And that was pretty surreal. But you just kind of, I'm sure you guys get this as well. Like, you just kind of get into the zone, and then once you're sort of off, you're kind of all right, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely gets nerve-wracking when you're like a massive fan of the bands, like, compared to, obviously we are fans of most of the bands and the people that we get on, but when there's someone that literally, this is one of my top 10 bands and I'm going to interview them, and you're just overthinking it in your head, like the 10 minutes before you enter that, Zoom call or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I think Ingested was the big one, and Nathan and me were both just
Ingested was like easily the one that I was the most nervous for.
Yeah,
because it was like the first, like I think out of all at that point we'd only interviewed like a handful, so it was easily the biggest one that we had yet.
Yeah,
and I remember literally I was like held back at work the day before, so we had to reschedule it to the day after, and then the work I was at the time, they said, okay, you're gonna be held back again, but I worked out if I got a taxi at this specific time when I'm finished, I'd have 5 minutes to get ready.
Blimey.
So I rushed home, and with about 2 minutes to spare, Brad, jumps on, and I'm like talking to him. He went, "How are you feeling?" And I wish we'd have kept this in, because it was actually quite funny, because like he goes, "How are you feeling?" I'm like, "I'm honestly freaking the fuck out on it. I'm not even kidding." And and then as soon as I say that, he joins the call, and I'm like, right, and I just snap it straight into it. But I just, because it's very rare I get nervous about things. Like I've always kept quite a cool head, especially the podcast, because like you said, I always say, oh, they're just people. But with that, because I hadn't really had a lot of time to sort of decompress from work and then put my headspace into it ready for the interview, I was kind of there like, oh, fuck. And as soon as he came on, and he like, it was so nice, and like calmed me down straight away, and like I was like, okay, this is going to be a good interview. And it ended up being one of the, like, probably one of my top interviews from like when we started.
When when the artist is really, really nice and really kind of easygoing, you almost forget who you're talking to at times. Like I just thought of another one when you asked me about the nervous thing, and I'd probably say Winston from Parkway Drive. I was pretty fucking nervous for that. But he was literally like one of the nicest people I've ever met. Like my then fiance, now wife, was helping me behind the camera and stuff because it was a download.
Yeah.
And I think I was just like, oh yeah, this is my fiance, and he's like, oh my god, congratulations! Like, when are you guys getting married? Like, all this sort of stuff. And I was like, wow, you don't have to care. You don't have to ask these kind of questions, but it's when artists are just really, really nice that it really does make a difference. You know what I mean?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, kind of like, because when you think of an interview, you sometimes think, oh, you've got to make the other person feel relaxed. But even as the interviewer, like, sometimes the person opposite has got to make you feel relaxed as well.
Yeah, cool.
And all that has always been the case. You just speak to people like you speak to your mates and stuff, and that makes things a lot more relaxing and easier.
Yeah, man.
It's also so helpful when they're naturally a very talkative person, because sometimes like you never know, you might get someone that's just like, and then they're just like sort of like answer it, and they're like, okay, we'll move on, and then before you know it, you're like, fuck, we've got like another like 20 minutes left in this interview, and like almost go through the questions, and it's like you're starting to thinking on top of your head based on what the conversation, which is always somewhat great, but it's always one of those things where it's like so great when they're like, oh, they'll talk to you about one subject for about 40 minutes, and then you're there like, I've still got like 8 questions left. This is great. Like it's just so great when they're naturally talkative. It makes the interview process so much better, and it just takes a lot of weight off you.
Yeah, for sure.
I think probably one of the best people we've interviewed was Matt from Kryptopsy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, and that one was so incredible because he not only inspired this podcast, he was also incredibly nice, and we've messaged him like once or twice asking for advice on the podcast, and within like a couple of minutes he replies with like a paragraph of advice, and you're like, he's just such a genuinely lovely person where he's just there like, there you go, there's the advice, and he just genuinely wants to help every asset of this community that we have.
Oh, that's so sick, man.
Oh yeah, easily. What I kind of want to ask with the YouTube is how long do you normally sit on like a video idea before you film it, and then how long do you normally sort of review it before you release it?
So do you mean in terms of like if I was to review an album, not like an interview or anything like that?
Yeah, if you was going to review an album, like what would be the steps? So it's like, okay, I want to review this album. How long do you normally like spend listening to it? Do you tend to replay it, or it's like sort of like, okay, I'm going to listen to it. Here's my thoughts on it, straight to the review.
Okay. So I listen to it probably as many times as I can, to be fair, without getting sick of it. Because I love, like when you get a record and like you can put it on your turntable or put it, in the CD player or whatever, and you still kind of really enjoy it. So what I try and do is listen to it as much as I can, and then have the review out, but then not touch it again until I've got my actual physical copy,
You've just got like there on CD, vinyl, TV, just everything at once, just to get the feel for it.
So the way I usually do is like, it kind of depends on the album. Like if it's a sort of, quite a demanding album, like what's a good example? Aurangzeb Pazuzu or something like that, where you're like, fucking hell, this is full on. I don't know if I can sort of like clean the kitchen at the same time as this.
Yeah.
Then I'll just kind of wait until I've got a particular moment and just listen to the whole thing with nothing else. Like I'll have my laptop with me just to like make notes of like my initial thoughts and stuff. And then after that, I'll listen to it kind of when I'm walking around, when I'm on my way to work or something like that. And then I kind of chop it up as well to kind of see like, would it work sort of if I was just diving in, or is this kind of like you listen to from track 1 to like track 10 or something like that. And just to try and kind of get a feel for different things. And then I listen to it, listening for different things like, okay, so I'll just listen to the bass, I'll just listen to the guitar, I'll just listen to the drums and the vocals, and like, try and kind of dissect it as much as possible. But a lot of it, truth be told, is just my initial reaction to it, to be fair. And then I try and write that down and keep that as sort of pure as possible, because I think, your first reaction, that's your real, it's kind of like going with your instincts, So like the more you listen to something, it kind of changes a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, it is very important to listen to something as many times as possible, because I've had, friends of mine who are like, oh, this record was really shit, and I reviewed it badly. But then afterwards it will kind of grow on them. And you're kind of like, well, that's not really a true kind of, I guess it's a reflection of how they felt in that moment. But you know what I mean?
Oh,
you
yeah.
need to sit on it for a bit to really get the full feeling for it.
Yeah.
There's even albums now that I looking back on it, like, I'd say, oh yeah, no, I absolutely love this album. And then like the more I've listened to it, being like, actually, it was good.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm as big of a fan of it as the other albums they've done. Like, looking back on it, it's not really the greatest. It's not like the worst either. And then I've listened to albums where, like, or even bands, like, I used to kind of like slate Bring Me the Horizon like a little bit and be like, oh, I don't really like it. But then the more I listened to them, the more I was like, actually, this was like a band that was really ahead of the curve with this stuff. So I was like, they were doing stuff years ago that bands are sort of just started going, oh, this is good now. And I was there like, and then I completely changed my opinion on them. I'm like, actually, these guys are really talented musicians and they make really good music. So I was like, quickly changed my opinion on them. And it's so important. I think what you said, it's so important to then sit there and retroactively look at it and go, okay, my opinion's changed now. I might not like, I don't think this track's the best one from the album, but I now think this one is because of this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I'm sure that, like, some people probably say I'm too nice, and like I always give like quite positive reviews and things like that. And I try and only kind of cover things that I do genuinely like on the channel, because I just feel like there's no point in being negative just to be sort of negative. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's enough of that in the world at large anyway. So I'm kind of setting myself up to fail by saying that, but it's more of a showcase, to be honest, of like what I think is really, really good. And that's one of the things I don't know if you guys have seen, but I do like a monthly favorites thing.
Yeah, I like that series, to be fair. I was watching some earlier. There's that one with the black metal band that does like Skyrim inspired music. So
Noctool.
I put that on my likes because I'm going to check out that album.
Yeah, it's really cool. Serena from Svalbard, like, she's just smashed it. That's a really, really interesting album. But I also like, the favorites aspect, because it means that maybe there might not have been a band that at the time I had. This is another thing, is it takes a long time to review something, and to try and do it properly. I'm a bit of a like perfectionist as well, to be fair. Like, I just kind of, I get so worked up over it.
Yeah.
Not in a sort of, oh, look at me, I'm a perfectionist, kind of thing. More like I'm just a really big fan.
Yeah.
And I want to do the record justice. So if there's a way that I can kind of give a little bit of, airtime to the smaller, more kind of underground, unsigned bands, then I love that sort of thing as well. It sounds like such a hipster thing to say.
No, I mean,
I understand it. Yeah.
I think as well, is it hard to, if you listen to an album, even if it's one that you really love, but you feel that there's something lacking in the album and you have to give it criticism, like, do you find that hard? Because I think for me, it's something that I thought of when me and Nathan have done reviews. I've only done a few of them, but like, if we ever had to, do an album and we really hated it and we had to review it, I'd feel very uncomfortable doing it. I don't want to, again, like what you said about being negative, like I don't want, the band to see it and get upset about it. Like, it's really weird things, I don't know, that I would find quite uncomfortable to do.
I guess it's one of those things where, and I feel like this is where a bit of ego kind of comes into it. Yep. Like, I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude who's sitting in front of a camera, like recording stuff on his iPhone, like in his living room.
Yeah.
I'm not the be all and end all. And I think that, sometimes, people who review stuff are very like, this is my opinion, and it's, the most important opinion. So like, they just slate something.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, well, it can be uncomfortable, but I try and kind of like be sort of like, well, it wasn't that great this time, so maybe on the next album it might be a little bit better, sounds like a teacher, to be fair. It's like, please try again. But I just feel like there's no need to be sort of like overtly sort of massively horrible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I see people like that in like when it comes like on social media all the time, and it does genuinely annoy me. Like I remember seeing, like, I can't remember who it was, but there was just some guy that I knew. It would everything he would tweet would be something negative about any band you could possibly think of.
Yeah.
And one day I just unfollowed him, and one day I just had enough. I was like, I replied to his tweet. I was like, look, mate, is there any band you actually do like? Because it doesn't seem like it. And I just unfollowed him because I was like, I'm sick of seeing shit like this. If you don't like it, I've always had the standpoint, if you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
There you go.
Yeah, like that.
It's
so simple. It's so simple. Just don't say it. Oh well, I think that song was shit. It doesn't matter. Your opinion doesn't really like. The band's not gonna see that and go, but Gareth in Wakefield didn't like that one song. Fuck, scrap it.
Change our whole sound
from the album. Like, let's just change the. We're gonna. Gareth, what do you think? It's like, if it's the band's vision, it's their vision. If you didn't like it, it's subjective. If you didn't like it, you didn't like it. There's no need to slate it, because
Exactly.
It's probably someone else probably likes it. Like, there's no point going, it was shit. It's like you're just spreading negative energy out there for the sake of it.
No, too right.
It's one of my biggest pet peeves.
But I do love your reviews though, and I especially love the ones like you did of Opeth when you revisit Blackwater Park after so many years. But also like giving like trivia and facts about it. So how would you prepare for these then? For doing like the older albums, like is it interesting sometimes going back to an album that you once used to cherish? Have you ever done one that you look back on, you're like, oh, that's not as much of a classic as I thought it was now?
I guess so. To answer the first bit of your question, I just try and research as much as I can beforehand. So like I'm doing, if I can get it done before I go on holiday, which is like on Sunday? I'm going on holiday. We're going out to Cornwall.
Lovely.
But I'm going to try and do Devin, his Deconstruction, Ghost, the 2 releases, which was meant to be for June, but I'm massively behind. So I just try and kind of like, read old articles or like interviews that may sort of, reveal kind of like little nuggets of information and things like that. And just think, again, it kind of goes down to like, what would I want to kind of know about, or, both as a fan, but also someone who may not be a fan. And, that could be kind of something interesting for someone who's never listened to Devin Townsend. Like he's a great example. He has so many different styles of music that, like Deconstruction is definitely not, like what he's playing nowadays, but, it might appeal to one other person. And in terms of like the albums that I guess I've changed opinion on some of them because, like initially I would think it's not really sort of my thing, or I wasn't really into that sort of genre at the time. But then over, various years, I'll really, really enjoy albums. So like I have a philosophy where like, if you buy a CD of something, don't just throw it away because at the time you don't like it. Like I got into Nile and Anal Nathrak, like in that way. I remember putting them on and just being like, what the fuck is this? but that was when I was like massively into Killswitch Engage, like huge vocals and all this sort of stuff, not Egyptian themed technical death metal. So, there's a time and a place for it, but there's not really been a massive one that I've sort of necessarily disliked. But it's very interesting to kind of go back to it. Now I'm 30 now. So to kind of go and look at it with the experience that I've had, like in life and things like that, and when you might have listened to the album and how it's kind of like, got you through certain times and things like that, I find that quite interesting.
It's like cool. It's like how you said you keep the CD and eventually you might appreciate it. It's like when you first get into metal, you should put these like CDs in a time box, and in like 5 years time, I've leveled up now. I can listen to this. So I hated Slayer and I hated death metal at first. I was like, I'm never gonna like this stuff. And then eventually your taste just changed. Like you want something a bit heavier. You look for some more, influences from classical or jazz or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's definitely good to revisit things because what you might have thought initially is not what you're gonna think maybe in a few years.
Yeah, 100%.
I remember I found my old phone. I had all my downloaded music on it recently, and like I remember like looking through some of the albums, being like, this is what I used to listen to, and then like realizing that at that time I used to think this is like the heaviest shit ever, and like listening to what I do now, I'm like, this is pretty light, this is standard. I remember like I think the first time I got into like really heavy metal was when I've told this story loads of times on the podcast, but my first actual live gig ever was Suffocation.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, so I was thrown into the deep end because
Wow.
me and my friend wanted just to go to a gig, and like they were the only ones playing at the time on the weekends. So like, never heard of Suffocation really. So yeah, we'll go. And at this point, like we'd only been listening to Korn and Slipknot, and I remember as soon as Suffocation came on, that Chris Pratt meme was like, that was literally me and my mate Caelan's reaction. We were there like, what the fuck is this? And how have we not known about it? Like, it was that as soon as I did that, I came out. I was like, I'm a death metal kid now. I was like, who wants my Korn shirt? I'm getting a Suffocation shirt.
Yeah.
Like,
there's no going back now.
Oh yeah, that door had closed. I'm like, you know what, new metal, we've had our fun, right? But I've discovered there's a new horizon. What would you say out of all the genres that you listen to is probably the one that you keep going back to and would say is your favorite genre in metal?
Well, death metal is definitely kind of one of my main loves. And I'd probably say prog is close, to be fair, but there's, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, about like taste and how it sort of changes over time. Like I used to think doom metal was the most boring shit in the world, but now I love it. Like I can't get enough of Sleep and like post metal as well, like Neurosis, Yob, all this sort of stuff. I really enjoy that kind of thing now. Whereas before I was just like, why are they playing the same riff for like 15 minutes? But I would say the constants are definitely like death metal. I have trouble with black metal sometimes because it just all sounds the fucking same. Like,
yeah, it's hard to find the diamond in the rough, isn't it?
Yeah, like sometimes when you do, it's really great and it's very, very solid. But I find that black metal on its own, like sort of traditional black metal, like Dark Throne and things like that. It sounds like it was recorded on a Fisher Price toy, and it's just not me. Like I don't know. That's I think why I really liked the new Dark Throne album, because it sounds like a 70s doom album, which is cool, but why not? You've released 19 albums, make one of them slightly different,
No, totally.
But yeah, like death metal is definitely my first and foremost love, I think. Yeah.
And what got you into heavier music then? Like, what was the point where you're like, this is the genre for me?
Oh, I don't know, man. It wasn't a kind of overnight thing. Like I said, I bought sort of CDs. Like I used to work in HMV in Oxford Circus. So that was like I'd basically get paid and spend my paycheck at work just buying CDs. And a lot of it was just kind of exposing myself to, like, I guess, heavier things, but slowly but surely. Kind of, I feel like I started, with the new metal kind of stuff, like Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, Korn, similar to you guys, to be fair.
Yeah.
And then, I got into like Kill Switch. Thrash was a big one, actually, because when I started playing guitar, like thrash was like the gateway. And I'm still a massive Megadeth fan. But over the years, again, I find thrash to be a little bit too boring now. I feel that. You know, I just feel like everyone sounds like Exodus, or, you know, like, and one of the reasons I like Megadeth, and particularly like Rust in Peace, Countdown to Extinction, you know, those albums with Marty Friedman on them, is because of his playing style, because of his phrasing and stuff. And Alex Skolnick is a great example of that as well. You know, he's a great guitarist. He can play jazz kind of numbers and things like that. So he adds that different kind of flavor to the thrash, which is one of the things I really enjoy. But yeah, you know, I guess that's kind of, yeah, it's been difficult, you know, kind of evolving over time to try and get to that sort of point, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely, because it's like, for me, I think I've got quite a similar sort of, like, I had a similar sort of journey as you. Like, I think death metal, if anyone asks me about it, I'm like, death metal is like S tier. It is like, it is top of the list of all like metal, I think, because there's so many bands coming out, especially at the minute, that are doing death metal, and it's like they're all incredible. Like, you can hear a death metal band and go, that's Deicide, you know what I mean, or that's Morbid Angel, and you can easily pinpoint them. And I completely agree with your point with black metal. Like, if you made a playlist with all the OG black metal bands, you'd be like, oh, who's on? I thought that was Mayhem.
Yeah.
Never mind. I mean, it was dark. Yeah, I mean, it's literally just, it would be that. And I think black metal especially only really shines when it's mixed with something else.
Yeah,
so
when it goes a bit avant-garde.
Black and Death's great. Like, if it's mixed with like another genre, I think it sounds incredible. But on its own, I think it just can't stand, like, and hold its own in the grand scheme of metal. And there's probably going to be a shit ton of black metal guys in the comments now going, fuck it. But I genuinely think, as a standalone genre, it can't stand next to and compete with all the other metal genres out there.
I also think, in a way, that, like, I don't know, you could say this about any genre in metal, but I feel like black metal in particular is quite narrow-minded. You know, that they're not as welcoming to sort of introducing different styles and, you know, things like that. I find like death metal is a bit more kind of like, yeah, okay, fuck it, we'll put a saxophone in there or something, you know, like. For sure. But, you know, I have to say, though, I do look after the guys in Imperial Triumphant here in the UK. And that's,
I was going to say that.
The fucking best bands, like, in the last 10 years, man. They are so good and such nice dudes as well. That Alphaville album is just incredible. But then, you know, you have people like Oranti Pazuzu. That's another one that kind of just popped into my head, because they're trying something different. And I'm like, right, cool. You know, I can get on board with this kind of black metal. But I guess it's just the traditional sort of stuff that just doesn't quite do it for me, you know, which doesn't mean it's bad. You know, it's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, like, I think metal in general is a very traditionalist sort of like music scene. Like, there's so many people. I think a lot of fans, because it's such a tight knit community, I think it makes it harder for bands to sort of appease everyone in the community. Yeah, it's literally everyone's there like, yeah, but like, back in my day, we used to listen to this band, and I fucking love this band. I own every single record by this band, and it's like, yeah, but we're not trying to be that band. Yeah, we're just trying to make music, and we hope you like it. It's like, yeah, but you don't sound like this band, so I don't want to listen. I think a lot of like metalheads can relate to that, where it's like, yeah, but I like these bands. Yeah, I think it's a lot hard to sort of get out the bubble a little bit sometimes, where you're like because of the podcast, I have to listen to like new bands all the time, so I'm always there like, oh yeah, keep them coming. But I always like, I ask friends or someone, I'm like, oh, I kind of just listen to like the same 4 albums every so often, really, and then I'll just rinse repeat. And I'm like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, I like. That's how I kind of want to go into like, obviously, your PR background. Like, how did that sort of start as a career? Like, was it something you've always sort of been interested in?
Yeah, so basically, I studied for about 2 years. It was like a 3-year course in 2 years that I did. So it was like a condensed course at the SAE Institute, and I did that in about 2 years. Honestly, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to work in music. Yeah. And, you know, that kind of, in the different modules that we had, you know, it kind of like narrowed the focus down as to what I might want to do. And also obviously kind of being on the other side of the PR coin, you know, I kind of have a rough idea of what, you know, what a job like that would entail. So that was kind of one of the things that, you know, as the sort of years went on, I was kind of like narrowing my focus to be in PR. And then I did quite a few internships. You know, I did some interning for like a radio promotions company. And then I interned, where did I I can't remember now. I interned in, at another smaller PR company, which focuses on kind of like new emerging bands. And then I interned where I work now at the Noise Cartel. So that was from January to April. And then, I got hired, I think, in July or June, something like that. It's coming up to my 2-year anniversary of working in music now. But I don't know if you're familiar with the Noise Cartel, but they look after, so Century Media, that's a retainer that we've got, Sumerian Records as well, and then individual artists, so like independent artists as well.
Is that like help to get some of the interviews and like, especially people like the bigger bands like Black Dahlia and stuff like that? Is that how that came about then, from like the PR background?
To be fair, not massively. That was just kind of like knocking on doors and, you know, kind of
seeing who answered.
Yeah, basically, you know, like and I think that's one of the reasons why I was like, okay, I can do this in PR, because it's just the other way around. You know, I'm just knocking on editors' doors and being like, this band are really good. Who feature them? And that's another thing, is that, you know, like, I like to try and showcase as many bands as possible, you know, like that I think are amazing. So that's one of the things for sure. But the, you know, like Black Dahlia Murder and stuff like that was just kind of, I've kind of established a relationship with the PRs, you know, that look after Metal Blade and things like that. And, you know, I think over the years, it wasn't an overnight thing, you know, it took quite a long time. But, you know, that just kind of ended up happening like that. So the PR was kind of quite separate from that.
So interesting.
Yeah, I've always wondered what it is like to work in PR, because like it seems like working in music, just anything in music to me just seems like such a dream job. But it's like, you know, like you get to speak to like bands like every day, and one of those things I've always fantasized about. But I was boring and ended up going into IT, and then just stayed in that. Found out I was good at it. You know, and you just go, actually, I'm pretty all right at this.
Well, that's the thing. You know, if you've got the podcast as a passion kind of thing, I think that's so important. You know, to keep that sort of thing going, and you know, that's a great way for you to, you know, get to speak to all these artists and everything like that at the same time. You know.
Yeah. Totally.
It's been like an insane sort of experience, because like we're not really doing it for a job. We're doing it because we absolutely love it. And like, I feel like each milestone we hit, I think because of that, it feels the ever more like better, where you're there like, when you've been like really grafting on getting this one band for weeks, and then you finally get to sit down and you're like,
relax.
You're like, and then you're like, you come back and you know we're like great speaking to them, and you know you've genuinely like, because we have bands all the time like messages going, oh yeah, well, if we're ever in the UK or anything like that, you know, we should go for beers. And it's like having that feeling of being like, fucking, you know, like, you know,
I've said like
from this fucking band I love, he's like, oh yeah, we'll go for beers. And I'm like, this is fucking great.
I said like it's the main thing about it for us is sort of, you feel more integrated in the metal community because you get to speak to some of the people that you look up to. And I think that's important because, you know, you speak to your friends, you know, you go to gigs and it's great to speak to the, you know, festival goers and whatnot, but it's also really nice to speak to the people that, you know, inspire you every day. So, and you get to speak to them as people, get to know more about them. And I think that is literally the main point. Like you said before, it's playing detective. You want to find out as much as you can about that person because they interest you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I always find it funny as well, you know, when you speak to like another metalhead and like, you know, like they're just talking to like about bands and all. The amount of times where like they brought up a band, I'm like, "Oh, I've interviewed them," and then like their reactions are always great because they're like, "Fuck off, no, you haven't." I'm like, "I'll bring up the footage," like, and it's just so cool with them going, "Holy shit, holy shit!" Like, it's like it's just fun, just doing it all. Like, I think if it ever started feeling like work, like really hard work, I think for me, I wouldn't sort of keep doing it as much because I do it because I genuinely enjoy it. But if it's
Yeah.
starting feeling to the point where I'm like, you know, I can't
Here we go
really
again.
bother.
Got,
Yeah, here we
got to
go.
stay as
Like,
a passion.
it has to have that. For me, interviews and podcasting and all the creative stuff, like I'm also in a band, like if all of them don't have that feeling of, oh yeah, I can't wait to do this, and I go, I can't really be arsed, or it's like, here we fucking go, like, then I always go, no, not doing that.
Yeah.
Anymore. Like if it's not proactively making me happy, I just cut it out.
Totally. So what's been like your key moment as a creator, and what's the most valuable lesson you've also learned throughout your entire journey?
Good question. Well, there's what's, I think the biggest lesson is just to kind of just keep doing what you're doing and kind of just not to sound like Nike, but just do it. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're kind of thinking of doing something and you know you're not quite sure, and I'm my own worst enemy with this sort of stuff. Like I'll kind of worry about, you know, oh, I don't know if I should do this. Like just fucking do it. You know, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look amazing or if it doesn't, you know, like, and that's one of the things that really held me back from starting, you know, the channel in the first place.
That's something actually that I was faced with quite recently because at least what I studied, I did like, you know, filmmaking and graphic design at university. And for about 2 years, I haven't really done anything filmmaking wise. You know, I've done a few music videos, but I've always wanted to make another short film. And I created an idea and I just left it for a month. I was like, I mean, you're not good enough. You can't write this. And you start thinking about all the sort of, you know, fundamentals that go into it. And you just start just spiraling out and you get in a hole of it. So I just thought today, fuck it. I'm just going to sit down and write it and just see what happens. Like, forget everything, all these other thoughts. And yeah, I'm actually more happy now that I've actually made a start because it's like doing an essay. As soon as you write the first title and you write the first paragraph, you're like, I'm sorted now.
Yeah, then you're off and you're kind of, you know, just kind of going from there. But I'm trying to think of, do you say it was a high point that you were asking?
Yeah, like what's been like the biggest high point?
Well, I guess meeting my wife was pretty big.
Yeah.
she used to work at Nuclear Blast, and we met at a Hatebreed show, which was pretty funny.
Everyone's to tell the grandkids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whilst they're moshing away. But then I guess a high point is just, I know this is going to sound so cheesy, but like just to be able to kind of, like, I look at, it's similar to what you guys were saying. Like, I look at my record collection and I'm like, fuck me, I've spoken to like half of these bands that are in here, and it's just quite surreal, especially when you have, you know, like certain people who, I think also, you know, I'm you know, quite blessed isn't the right word, but I live in London, you know, so like the bands come through here. Well, they were until Brexit.
Yeah.
The bands, you know, like come through here all the time. And, you know, you've got people who, I don't know, maybe in like Brazil, I don't know, that's quite a sort of stereotypical answer, but, you know, someone who is far away, who may not ever get to meet a band, let alone interview them or things like that. So I guess that, you know, without sounding too boring, that's kind of the highest point, because you just get to chat to people and kind of like vibe with them. And that's one of the reasons that I like, you know, just like chatting to you guys, because you get to just speak to different people, learn, you know, more about kind of different walks of life, what people are doing, and just kind of broaden your horizons, I guess.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, I also found like I know like people are sick of hearing about the pandemic, but I found in the pandemic doing the podcast and interviewing people helped me through it so like it so like because it's like everyone like sort of like, oh, there's just a lot of isolation, and I remember being that like I haven't really felt isolated and being like, why am I? Well, because every week I sit down and talk to a stranger, and like then I go and in a way the podcast really helped us through the pandemic because I hope that like we sort of helped a few other people through the pandemic as well, like being like, oh, I was scared that when the pandemic happens that interviews wouldn't be as easy to do, and if anything it made it easier for us to get bands on that people wanted to listen to.
Absolutely. Everyone was sat at home.
Oh yeah. We were so surprised like when we initially messaged people the amount of responses we got, and it was like, oh, and then it was like a clicking moment, when you just kind of forget for a second, like everyone's sat at home, so of course they're free to do an interview. Like, normally if you'd messaged them on the Instagram, they'd be like, yeah, in 4 months, if that's okay, like, and it was one of those things where I think just doing like what you said, just doing it is the highlight enough. It's like you don't need like this super giant moment where you blow up and you get like 100,000 like million views. Like you could just the act of doing it and sitting down is good enough.
I have to say, actually, now that you kind of mentioned, like the big moment of like everything blowing up and things, one of the really, really nice moments was, I remember, I can't remember what it was. It was something to do with YouTube, basically not monetizing anything that you were doing unless you had like 1,000 subscribers or something like that. And I just remember I wasn't that far off. I think I was like 600 subscribers. So it was quite early on. And I just remember like messaging, like a couple of friends and stuff. And it just like spread like wildfire, just being, I asked them like, if you know of any friends like who want to, find out about albums and stuff like that. And it was more just like how nice people were. And they were like, like retweeting stuff, sharing stuff, all this sort of thing. And that was kind of a real high point, because I ended up making, I think, 1,000 subscribers in about 2 weeks or something stupid like that. And I was just like, that's the kind of, again, this is all going to sound so cheesy, but like the power of the community, which is so nice to see. And also, one of the kind of benefits of social media, I guess, like it's not all bad.
No, absolutely.
I completely get what you're saying from that as well, because when we interviewed Duncan Bentley from Pulverdinia, like it was that just them commenting on the post, it was the first post to break over 1,000 people reached on the post, and it got up to 10,000 people who would view, like seeing the actual post. It's just us going, yeah, the interview with Duncan Bentley's up. It like had reached 10,000, and like I remember Brad messaging me because like we'd put the episode up and we were like, okay, well, it's the weekend now, like let's just chill out for a little bit.
Yeah.
And like he messaged me going, you fucking seen the numbers on the Duncan Bentley post? Like I was there like, no. And I looked at it, I was like, shit.
Yeah, it caught us off guard for sure. It was one of those surreal moments. But yeah, I think it's always a nice thing to see, like, you get some sort of traction from what you do. Yeah, like that, and just doing it is incredible, really. I want to ask you more about like your personal life as well. Like, is there any hobbies and interests that you have that people might not know about you?
I guess so. Well, especially over the pandemic and stuff, I've been doing a lot of like walking and stuff like that. So there's like this little route which kind of goes around the M25 of London called the Capital Ring. And we did like, I think there's like 15 different segments. So we kind of had, like when you kind of didn't really have anything to measure against, and the only thing you could do was like go outside, it was nice to have that as kind of like little measurements. So we could be like, okay, well, this weekend we're going to do this walk and stuff like that. And it's ended up being really, really great. And I've enjoyed kind of walking a bit more, which is pretty boring. But
it's therapeutic though, to be honest, like especially really when you go to like nature areas, and it just kind of decompresses your mind a bit,
For sure. Because you don't have to think about anything else, like you're not thinking, oh, fuck that interview I arranged, that needs to be rescheduled, or, I need to make sure this press release is out, or I need to make sure this video's up by this time or whatever. You're just thinking left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And then I guess another big one recently is like playing guitar and stuff like that, to be fair. I mainly started playing Tool songs. I love Tool, man. They're such a fucking amazing band. I saw them for the first time, was it 2 years ago at Download, something like that?
Was it 2019?
Yeah.
I was there as well. That was my first time seeing them.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, Brad, every time someone said, oh, we were at that Download, I was like, yeah, me too. And Brad's been like, I didn't go.
No.
Big regrets.
Oh, mate. What
Don't you think the atmosphere was incredible? Like I think even if you were at the front to all the way at the back, like you just got the same feeling. And not to mention the visuals were insanely trippy. I remember I think I watched them more than I actually watched Tool play. I was there like
well, they're almost like a fifth member of the band, aren't they? Like, you know, there's definitely four of them. it's you know, like an extra member of the band, and especially because Maynard, I can't remember if he sings at the back or if he, you know, he's not really sort of like the
he's
main
always
character.
sort of outside your eye. Like it's almost like he's like the opposite of a front man, you know, like in a way, like he lets the music do the talking. He's not the one that does the talking and hypes you up. He's the one that goes, this is the music, just listen to it.
Just go. Yeah. But so I kind of find Tool songs very like relaxing and sort of therapeutic. So I started playing like stuff from 10,000 Days and like Fear Inoculum as well, and just kind of like noodling around. But
That's a crazy way to start guitar, to be honest.
Oh no, I should have probably said I used to play guitar when I was like 15. I played for years and years and years, but I've basically like not picked up the guitar in it must be like 4 or 5 years properly. So that was kind of like, you know, going back into it, you know, when you haven't been doing something for such a long time and you're still kind of like, yeah, I could play that, no problem. And then you sit down and you're like, oh, I can barely even like play a palm-muted riff, you know. So it was a bit of an eye-opener there. But I guess another one would probably be traveling, to be fair, when, you know, before COVID, you know, going to different countries and things like that. Like on our honeymoon, we went to we did like a 3-week road trip of California, and we just went all around, and that was just like one of the fucking best holidays I've ever been on. It was just insane.
I've always wanted to go to America. Me and my girlfriend were talking about it recently. She asked me, if you could move to America, where would you move? And I said I'd go to Austin, in like Austin, Texas. And she was like, oh, why? I was like, because like at the minute, like there's a lot of money going into Austin, and there's a lot of bands that I also like coming from Austin, and like it seems like just a great city to sort of live in at the minute. And like I've always wanted to visit America because it's almost like something's always drawn me.
Yeah,
like it's always been like I really want to go.
It's amazing, man. If you can go because it's just, I don't know, it's just like a Disneyland. It's a Disneyland for metalheads as well, for sure.
Oh yeah. I always said to Nathan, because you mentioned it to me, didn't you? That I'd love to go to Austin. I could imagine myself living there. I was like, yeah, I can just imagine Nathan there on like his armchair with a beard, just like living that redneck life with like a little truck as well.
Brad always has this joke that like I'm basically like a redneck or like that. Because he said that if you lived in America, it'd suit you. Because I like country music. Like I absolutely, to be fair, I love country music. I've got kind of a redneck aesthetic, like how I dress and stuff. Like I like really like I like just like really Americanized things. And so Brad's there, like I can just see sat on a ranch, on a porch, just sat there listening to beer and like drinking beer and listening to death metal.
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah. Nah, the other thing is though, I absolutely hate any like place that has an animal that could kill me without thinking about it. Oh. And Florida has so many.
Australia's off the cards then.
Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah,
off me. No spiders.
I've said Australia is a no-go zone for me. Like because I'm like, even the plants can kill you. I like the amount of anxiety that I would have on a daily basis in Australia. I'd be like, all right, you better check my shoes 47 times just to make sure there's nothing in there that can kill me. I can't get into that mindset.
Mhm.
I'd just be a ball of like nerves. Like there's a girl that I used to work with that was from Australia, and she was like telling me, oh yeah, once like there was like this spider that was in my bedroom when I was a kid, and like if you got bit by it, you'd basically be dead in an hour. And I'm like, that doesn't sound fun. Like, why does that sound fun? And then she in the same breath, she's like, I love Australia. It's obviously where I grew up. I'm like, but the fucking spider, like that would, if that had been me, that room would have been that spider's room. I'd have locked that door, thrown away the key, and be like, this is his house now, or like whatever, like this is the fucking spider's house. Fuck this, and just left.
Was California the best place you've been then?
Yeah, to be fair, I think California is probably one of my favorite places. Personally, that I've been. I love LA. I think, you know, a lot of people are quite sort of hit and miss with it. Some people really love it, and some people aren't massively keen on it. But yeah, LA was really, really cool. And we did like you know, road trip. So we went to Joshua Tree, we went to the Grand Canyon, Las Vegas, and then like went through Death Valley. And that was the first, it was literally around the time that the Tool album, everything relates to Tool, the new Tool album came out. So we were listening to Fear Inoculum for the first time in Death Valley, and Death Valley basically looks like, have you guys seen Aliens?
Yeah. Films.
So LV 426.
Oh my god.
It literally looked like that, but not as blue and a lot hotter.
No, you gotta love an album that just like fits the surroundings. You feel like you're just completely like immersed. It's really nice.
Sure.
Yeah, like I'd love to listen to Tool in just like a completely like a desert, like Death Valley, like that I feel like Tool were like, we have made this album, so to listen to it in a desert. In the desert. Especially if Fear Inoculum, like I always had like a joke where it took me like 2 years to finish it, as in like from the start of the album, because it was like a heavy album. I remember saying to Brad, I'm like, look, it's one of those albums where I'll listen to like a song when I'm in the mood for Tool.
Yeah.
Because I'm not always in the mood for it, but when I am, I'm like really into it. I'm like, so when they had like 10-minute songs in that album was so long, I was there like, it's gonna take me a while to get through this.
Oh, man, I know exactly what you mean.
Oh yeah, it's just one of those things with Tool, and especially that album. Like the songs were so long and so well made that it's like watching Lord of the Rings. I'm like, I need to dedicate an entire day to this.
Yeah,
like I need to find like a slot. I'm free for the next 2 days. Like.
I want to say as well, I know that you're a big vinyl collector and you've got like a pretty impressive collection. So we've been making this question recently, which is almost like a Stog, Marry, Avoid, but for metal related stuff. So basically, what would be your one vinyl to keep, one vinyl to destroy, and one that you sat on and eventually warmed to?
Ooh, blimey. I'd probably say vinyl to keep would be either Between the Buried and Me Colours or maybe Ghost Reveries by Opeth. But then you've got Meshuggah as well with Hobson. This is hard.
It will be like 9 hours later, so
yeah,
could be Sleep Talking, could be this.
Yeah.
So
so there's another one that I have to crush.
Yes, you have to crush one. There must be one in your collection that you like. I don't like you anymore. Just or maybe not.
I'm trying to like, you know, like when you go through sort of the alphabet in your head. What would I get rid of? To be fair, maybe Metallica. I don't know. I know that's
which
like
album though? Which one's getting thrown in the trash?
To be fair, I've got like a pressing of the Garage Inc., but it was like a illegal pressing. I'm not a massive fan of Garage Inc., to be fair, but I'm trying to think if there's any other albums. Because I'm so like picky with what I choose, and also because we live in quite a small flat, so like my space is very limited. So I'm trying to kind of try and be as simple as possible. I'll try and come back to that one, but I think it might be.
Yeah, that's okay. I'd throw Garage Inc. in the trash as well, to be honest.
At least it's not Saint Anger.
Yeah.
And then what was the last one? Oh, the one that's grown on me.
Yeah, the one that's grown on you.
Oh man, I almost feel like I need to get my Discogs list up. What a sentence that was. The one that's grown on me. You know when someone asks you something and your mind goes completely blank?
That happened to us yesterday because we interviewed one of our friends' bands and they actually asked us like, what would be your dream tour lineup? Because we asked them the same question.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shit, no one asks us questions like this. So how the fuck am I meant to answer? I was there like just circling, like you said, through the alphabet in my mind of all the bands I've got. And I'm just like, oh, fuck.
What was funny though is I was completely prepared for it because obviously I'm obviously in a band myself. I've always thought about it. I'm like, who would I like to go on tour with? So as soon as he asked it, I'm like, this, that.
No worries. Actually, an album that's grown on me is probably Ben Howard. His latest, I don't think his latest album anymore, but at the time it was Noonday Dream. That wasn't kind of like a massive sort of record for me at the time, but it's really, really grown on me. And actually Radiohead, Kid A, that album. Yeah. I remember my dad had it ages ago, and I used to think it was the most boring shit I'd ever heard. But now I've got my own copy. You know, I'm a massive Radiohead fan, so something must have like trickled down into my sort of psyche. But I think that's probably my lot.
Yeah, that's fair choices.
I'd easily destroy. If it were me, I'd probably destroy my Metallica. Right, I bought
Metallica getting bashed today.
What I thought, I bought a record for what I thought, you know, the Ride the Lightning Green print, misprint.
I've got that.
Have you got it?
The green one, right?
Yeah. I accidentally got a bootleg one, right? Because I went to a record fair, and at the time I didn't know they didn't do coloured vinyl versions of the green misprint.
Same here.
I bought it, and I'd been like, took it out, looked at it, and then I was Googling it, and they're like, yeah, that's fake. I was like, motherfucker! Like,
yeah, no. I was exactly the same. I was with my father-in-law in Wrexham in Wales, and it was a tiny little record fair, and I was like, fuck, they've got Ride the Lightning, and it's like fairly cheap as well. I was like, yeah, fucking get that. And it was the green one. So then I got home exactly like you, and I was just like, oh, it's a fucking bootleg. Fuck.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I would like as well, because I looked at the back and I had the knowledge at the time. My mate once said, if you want to find out if it's legit, there's some codes at the back, punch that in, it'll tell you the year it came out, and if it does and if it matches up, it's real.
Yeah.
So I punched it in, matched up. I was like, I fucking got it. So I got it, took it home. I was like, this is red. And the logo for Bennett Records looks a bit weird.
Yeah, that's it. Bennett Records. Yeah.
Yeah, because have you ever heard the story of how that misprint happened?
No.
So when they printed it, I think there's only 200 of them that got printed. When Bennett Records got, I think it was the order sheet, it said instead of blue, green. They printed them, sent a couple out to shops, and then Metallica's like, obviously representatives are like, it was meant to be fucking blue, man. And they're like, shit. And they tried recalling it all, but there's only like a couple, I think 100 in existence, and it's obviously Ride the Lightning. It's such a rare misprint that I think they sell for like I saw one sell for like £1,000.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, like so like that's why I was so chuffed. I was there like, this could be it, and I was like, it wasn't. I've been trying to find one. I'm just hoping that one day I turn up to a record fair and there's someone that actually does have one
Yeah, man.
that doesn't know what it is, and I'm like, and
Yoink.
I can say I'm happy and just turn around back. I'm one of the guys that own like the legit green ones. Like, but yeah, I've been caught out with bootlegs so many times with vinyl fairs, and some of them are so real looking.
Yeah, for sure. I've done the same. Like I can't remember what exactly it was, but there was a couple that I found, and you get home and you're like, oh, I've got this wicked, and then afterwards when you realize it's a bootleg, you're like, ooh, feel a bit dirty.
Yeah, like you feel like you've done something wrong. You're there like, oh
yeah.
Do I go back and just go, hey, what the fuck is this? Like, but what's been like the best find that you've ever had at like a record fair?
It wasn't at a record fair, but it was in a shop in London, and it was Decapited's The Negation, which was like, I'd been looking for that record for ages. That was probably kind of like the most impulse sort of find that I could think of. Maybe Neurosis is Given to the Rising as well.
Yeah,
that was. It's like this black, white, swirly vinyl, which was really, really cool. I'd probably say those two, to be fair. I don't really go to like a lot of record fairs, to be fair. I don't know why.
I got I think this is my most prized vinyl, simply because of like I fell in love with the album. It's Motorhead Ace of Spades.
Oh yeah.
But it's an original pressing, and it's the first pressing.
Oh wow.
And I remember finding it at a record fair, and this guy was just like, yeah, I've had it for years, and I've never really, you can see I've never really opened it. I'm like, keep talking. And he went, I've never played it or anything like that. I'm like, keep talking. He went, I only want like 30-40 quid for it. I'm like, hey, fucking done. Like, and then just walked. I was there like, this is the best. I'm like, this is the best day ever.
Sure.
And as soon as I opened it, it still smelled like the 80s.
Yeah, it's like a little time capsule. So we are sort of getting to the end point of the interview now, and one way that we always like to leave it is, what advice would you give to a new creator starting out, and what advice would you give to yourself if you could?
Oh, I've asked this question to a lot of people. What advice would I give? I guess kind of echoing what I was saying, like kind of don't worry about everything being sort of perfect, and trying to look the best, or try and kind of be as good as you think you'll be in your head, and just kind of go with it. Also, just don't necessarily. I think one of the other things is, don't pay too much attention to comments, because when I was at Metal Sucks, that was fun.
They're brutal in them comments.
Man, I got called crumpet fucker just because I'm English. I had these like white tunnels in my ears, and someone started calling me paracetamol ears, which I had to, honestly, I commented back on them and I said, I applaud your creativity, because this is really cool. It's better than wanker. And yeah, just kind of just make sure you enjoy it, and don't sounds like a Journey song, but don't stop, like
believing.
Boom boom. But yeah, just don't stop kind of enjoying yourself, and remind yourself why you started it as well. That's another thing, is like there have been some times with the channel, like where I've been kind of a bit tired or overworked, and I'm kind of like, oh, this is like hard work. And then you kind of think about it and you're like, no, it's worth it. Or like, someone will say something really kind, or, and it makes it all worthwhile and things like that. And as for what I would tell myself, a lot of it is similar to what I've just said, probably, is, don't get too hung up on your own deadlines as well, actually, because I've done that so many times. Like, Laura's really good at that. She's just kind of like, it's meant to be fun. Keep it fun. Don't be like, I have to get this, interview out, or I have to get this album review out. But the way I am in my head, I'm just kind of like, I get sort of fixated by something, and then it's kind of like, oh, it has to come out. So I would say, yeah, don't get too bogged down, and just enjoy it as well, and make the most of it, because not everyone, you know, is doing this kind of thing. And, you know, I try and always be as grateful as I can be, you know, to talk to anyone basically, and, you know, meet new people and just hang out, really. I know that's quite a waffly answer.
No, that's exactly what we're looking for, to be honest.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, I love your content, and I'm going to continue to watch your content, and it's been very insightful to chat with you, and hopefully we'll chat again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've really enjoyed this as well.
Yeah. I'd love to, you know, come and hang out with you guys again. No problem. I'll try and think of more like vinyl that I'd destroy.
Yeah, send us your list. Yeah, thank you so much.
In terms of technicality, I feel that, you know, like the genre of progressive metal can get kind of bogged down by technicality. What do you guys think of that?